good morning, good afternoon, and hello everybody. This is episode number 11. So I hope everyone's having a fantastic week. And yes, so another busy week at Future Match. We're really excited. As I said, we're marching towards our October launch. So we're looking forward to kind of getting that all together. So the team is busy putting everything together in terms of how we go out and do that. Yes, and as usual, right, we're out there looking at new sectors, engaging with organizations, and hopefully taking information into the hands of early careers talent so that you guys and girls can all make informed career decisions at this present time. And for organizations just to showcase your sector opportunities within your organizations as well. So yeah, we've been out there sort of doing what we love doing every single day. So what is the sector this week? So the sector this week is healthcare. It's probably a sector that's really interesting. And as I said, it's probably been in the news a lot since a thing called COVID kind of came along and all the fundamental changes that happened over the last 2 to 3 years. But also, I think there's been already a huge growth within that sector across opportunities for, tech, health tech being a big space, the opportunities of how technology is going to impact on our healthcare provision, how we diagnose various diseases and viruses and all that type of stuff. If you look at the speed of which we went from having no vaccine or any way to protect ourselves against COVID to what happened within a very kind of short space of time. So that just kind of gives an idea of how much this sector is not only exciting, but it's actually something that's the core of everything that it happens around us, right? So we're going to look at it from a perspective of probably maybe this podcast, we might do another one again, just to kind of go into the minutiae of other parts of the sector as well, because as I said, this is a vast and huge sector. So we know it in terms of two sides of it, right? There's the kind of the independent private healthcare side. And obviously we've then got one of the largest employers in the UK in the healthcare sector in regard to the NHS. I think that makes us very different from any particular country in the world by having NHS. When you look at most countries, everything is driven by the private healthcare provision. So that makes it quite exciting. So you think about it from the UK market perspective, think about the NHS, probably one of the most renowned kind of healthcare organizations, and everybody across the world, in essence, wants to work for that. I'm lucky enough for my mum trained as a nurse, so she worked in NHS. Then went into when we moved to Zimbabwe. She worked in healthcare there, which is a mixture of basic private healthcare, and then came back and went back into NHS. And one thing she's always said to me about healthcare, which is something that it's probably one of the industries where you can't say a lot about this. You can't use the same phrase. I think there's other ones that do apply to this, but in essence, she says nursing was a calling. So for her, it was never a choice, if that makes sense. It's just something that she wanted to do. And that's really fascinating me, because obviously, we talk about what I do, my passion, and she understands what Future Match is all about. And so to have that kind of conversation, and she keeps that as being the kind of the center of the line. And then you can imagine all her best friends and my aunties and all that type of stuff, funnily enough, are all within that healthcare space, whether it's a maternity nurse, mental health nurse, to general practitioner nurse like my mum, they all say the same thing. And I think that is probably one industry where it's just a calling. I think I've spoken to teachers and they've kind of mentioned it in bits and pieces, and some will say it, some won't. But definitely it's a kind of a core line that goes across what working in healthcare means across the board. And I've had huge opportunities to see a lot of aspects to people involved in healthcare, whether it's from the front line to the support, to the operations, to the services side of things. You just have this sense of pride that comes into play. So we talked about private. We know what we're talking about with public, right? So if we think about independent healthcares, let's look at some of the bigger names that people know of. So you got Bupa, BMI Healthcare, Care UK, Believe, and Aspire Healthcare as well. So let's just give me an example. There's so many, right? As I said, when you break it all down, there's a huge number of organizations. The best way to do this is kind of break it into 4 subsectors, which is what we've done. We've kind of said, look, you've got one subsector. 1 is healthcare services and facilities. 2 is medical devices, equipment, and hospital supplies and manufacturers. You've got a 3rd part, which is around medical insurance, medical services, and managed care. To the 4th part, which is kind of pharma, as we call it, and related segments. Okay, so when you think of the first segment, so that's our healthcare services and facilities, think of hospitals, right? Think of blood and organ banks. And fascinating, I've had an opportunity to see someone quite close to me working within the blood transplant transfusion team, so NHSBT, and the stuff that we're doing around plasma and donor collections and raising profile and the legislation changing there, and you see the amount of opportunities then available. You think, wow, this is a really, 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 really exciting sector. So think about those hospices, specialty hospitals, and general medical. So that's your first segment that you're looking at from that perspective. The second kind of bit that kind of breaks it, we still in this is what fascinating. We're still in sector 1. Segment 1, you then got your nursing and residential care facilities. You've got the second sub below that, you've got ambulatory healthcare services, think ambulance, outpatients, medical and diagnostic units. You then go into the kind of medical practitioners, healthcare professionals. So you've got that whole kind of sector across the board, chiropractic, psychologists, dermatology, etc. And then when you think about the kind of the second subsector that we talked about, so imagine that one sector had all of these kind of core parts. And I guess the first subsector really breaks it down into what we know and see on a day-to-day basis, right? So think about it, our dentist, the doctor, the physio, chiropractic, all that type of stuff, they're following down that first sector. The second one, which is around medical devices. So if you think about this is kind of mainly medical companies who are at the forefront of the latest medical technology offering, and they kind of produce this right to be utilized across the whole spectrum of the medical equipment and hospital supplies, products and services. So in essence, you go to the when you go for an MRI scan, the machine that's used there. When your old school X-ray is taken, what's that using there? Think about the containers that collect your blood, the samples, and all that type of stuff. These parts of this, how they read the images, all that type of stuff falls into this kind of sector, right? The 4th part, which we talked about, which is around kind of medical insurance, and that says it itself, doesn't it, right? So this is focused on industries or parts of the industry that provide medical insurance or different type of services to either patients or other medical sector players. So that's that part. And then the last part, which is the pharmaceutical aspect, which is really focused on the development and production of and marketing of drugs or pharmaceutical licensed products such as medications. And basically, when you look at pharmaceuticals, think about them as this is the space where we eliminate the need for the inpatient and invasive care services. One thing that's really, really fascinating is that unlike, I think, in the US, where we have the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare really, really closely connected, we kind of have a real separation between the two. And I think that's obviously determines the kind of, when you're going to see your doctor, there is no pressure to kind of prescribe certain medication because that's the one that they're all on a reward basis for. But it's interesting to know that this is probably one of the biggest sectors for us. And if you look at the R&D side, if you look at AstraZeneca, when we talk about an organization in that space and what they did with the COVID vaccine, that gives an example of just the impact of when you bring together all the components of the of the healthcare sector. That shows what can be achieved. So you think of pharma, think of AstraZeneca, think of Moderna, Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline as some of the bigger players within that particular sector. So I think when you look at it from I guess opportunities perspective, huge amount of opportunities, right? So if you look at every single part of that sector for early careers, there is a opportunity, whether it's apprenticeship programs, graduate programs, work experience, a chance to work across the front line. There's leadership and management role, there's marketing, there's procurement, there's IT and software, there's research and development, there's finance. I mean, it is literally any possible role you can imagine. Okay, so when you mention healthcare, I know this happens, right? You mention healthcare, everybody sort of thinks, oh, you're going to be nursing, doctor, frontline, healthcare assistant in a care home. Yep, absolutely, those roles exist, right? But they are a fraction of what other opportunities are available. When you look at behind the when you see our campaigns that happened when we were trying to be advised on the campaign to get everybody vaccinated, the campaign to talk about what we need to do over the last 3 years around healthcare guidance, etc. Those are marketing campaigns that come into play, right? So there's people putting those together. There's the kind of, if you look at the NHS app being delivered, there's software development, IT coming into play. If you think about the financial element that came into play, the negotiation of the contracts, etc. The leadership of how do we mobilize such a vaccine rollout plan? How does that happen? So you look at this, if you're early careers and early young talent and you're thinking, actually, I want to be in healthcare, right? But for me, the frontline part isn't where I feel I want to be at, but I still want to be part of it. Do not worry. There is so much opportunities, right, across the board. When you go into the likes of the pharmaceutical side, the research and development, the sales side that has to take place, because at the end of the day, if I'm manufacturing a drug, I still need to get that when it's licensed and it's available. I need to get that into the retail shops, all that type of stuff. So there's a huge amount of career, and then there's the supply chain to that. When we're looking at masks, when we're looking at PPE and all that type of stuff. I'm just naming a few things, right? But the whole link to that is huge. Okay, so we did a bit of research, right? We just thought, look, we'll try and see what the fastest roles are growth-wise. It's also been interesting because we had to kind of take into consideration the fact that the last 2 to 3 years have probably seen a big scale of roles coming into play. So we kind of started to look at these roles and gone, okay, let's imagine what it would be, how much is this role driven by the demand of COVID? However, what does this role look like in a post-pandemic environment? So we kind of hopefully come up with some roles that we feel are going to still be the fastest growing roles, massively in demand and huge opportunities. And this is in no pecking order whatsoever. This is us just putting those all together. So we went social and human kind of service assistance. So think about healthcare assistants. That's been the case. So they reckon there's about a 17% growth predicted between 2010 and 2030. I'm sure that's probably increased quite a lot over that period of time. The management side, so medical and healthcare service management, 32% increase over the next 10 years. People who know me always talk about a job title that I love throwing in, and the one is called a diagnostic sonographer. I was like, wow, okay, T, what's that all about, right? And basically this helps healthcare providers diagnose patients' healthcare conditions by using specialized equipment. They provide images, so think ultrasounds and sonograms, and because they do that of different organs and tissues. I was like, oh, wow, okay. And you know why that one actually ended up interesting me? My mum, towards at one stage in her career in Zimbabwe, that's what she was responsible for doing. So all those type of things that happened, she was kind of involved in that space, and that's seen a growth of around 19% over the next 10 years is the kind of forecast. But I thought, wow, isn't it nice to just know that this is what this official title means? I think this one is probably come into play a lot with COVID, but that's called a phlebotomy technician. So that basically is drawing the blood from patients, etc., and using it for different tests, etc. So if we look at that and people go, oh, but yeah, but is that just going to be a COVID thing? Actually, having an insight into someone working for the kind of the plasma and blood side of the NHS, this is something that's going to be growing massively. So the one stage, if you remember, plasma was being looked at as a opportunity to help in the fight against COVID. I think in the country now we've had a change of legislation. So again, when you look at the need for that expertise, it's huge, right? So again, it's one of those fastest growing sectors. You got your occupational therapist, which is kind of a growth space as well. We've got dental assistants. And we've got physical therapy assistants as well. So they are your kind of core growth sectors. There's so many other things growing, and we are going to look into furthermore detail around how do we break those into the subsectors that we spoke about. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a bit more information on that. But there's a huge amount of opportunities. Salaries. So if you look at healthcare and pharma, you're really coming in at a £29,500 starting salary, which is pretty good and really up in the top 3 to 4 income areas, paid areas in the industry. NHS apprenticeships, you're looking at anything between 8.5 to about 22k. And you say, okay, look, Kufa, all these opportunities are guys a future match. This looks like a really exciting sector. I can see myself being here in a long time. What do we do to get here? How do we get these roles? So what I will say to you right now, working in healthcare right now, or as a sector, is a lot easier than you think, right? So we know we've got the NHS on one side, private healthcare on the other side. So how do I get into those? So when you look at it, there's a number of different programs. So from an apprenticeship perspective, you've got the physiological services, life sciences, physical science, biomedical side, clinical bioinformatics. You've got a variety of apprenticeships, so levels 2 to 4, which are focused on getting you entry level into apprenticeships. You then got a huge number of degree related apprenticeships on, from nursing, as I said, finance, marketing, all that type of stuff throughout that space. You got undergraduate, which you kind of go through the NHS practitioner training program, and that's also increasing and being molded into an apprenticeship program as well. You got graduate entries, which is the kind of the NHS program. Again, or if you've got a degree, science-related degree. So there's a real openness in terms of access to those kind of opportunities in that kind of sector. So it's really exciting. It's a really, really, really exciting sector. What I would say, like everything else, I was actually talking to someone, and we're hopefully going to, now that she's finished her A-levels, we're probably going to bring her on board to do a podcast with us. But we were talking about the importance of qualification. So, one of the things is, if you're looking to go into that, especially if you're going into the kind of, the core science side of healthcare, make sure you've got your sciences, your math subject on board on that side of it, so you don't have to worry about that going forward. If you're going to management and stuff like that, then the traditional subjects are the ones that you're looking to get into. So, marketplace, 100,000 nursing vacancies in the NHS, huge opportunities across the board. Healthcare, whether it's marketing, I said procurement, IT software, frontline support, operational. Big opportunities to kind of get involved in this particular exciting sector. So hopefully that kind of gives you a really headline overview of what we're looking at within the healthcare sector. And next one, we're going to talk about a little bit more around the specific areas, and we'll probably do a piece on what the apprenticeship pathway looks like, what does a university pathway look like. We'll probably touch in terms of some of the university needs, etc. So that's just to give you a really, really good flavor of what we're looking at this time in healthcare. As I said, it's a really exciting sector with a huge amount of opportunities, and you feel like it's one of those sectors where, yes, it's a calling. I feel like the job satisfaction you get from that sector is huge and massive. And I think, it's one of those jobs where you feel like you're not just going into work, you're actually making a difference, and you're changing lives, you're saving lives, you're transforming how people access healthcare solutions, how they live their own lives. I think it's really exciting, right? And as I said, lucky enough and blessed enough to have been part of, having seen my mum being part of that sector, I've got family in that sector, friends in that sector. And it's one of those sectors that you just see a lot of stuff happening. And as I said in previous podcasts, I love construction, but I definitely love healthcare just as much. So hopefully that really helps. Please follow us on our YouTube page. Follow us on our LinkedIn page. Like our information documents. Any questions you have, feel free to just always drop them on the comments, right? And we're more than happy to cover those type of things. So next podcast, we're going to build a little bit more on healthcare, and we're probably going to talk a little bit more around kind of decision making and opportunities coming into play, with the consideration that we're coming into those kind of results in a couple of months' time. But hey, before we finish off, right, well done to every single GCSE student out there. Well done to every single A-level student out there. If you're a uni student in your final year, you're submitting your dissertations, your thesis. If you're in college and you've done your exams and you're doing the same thing, I want to say, hey, well done. And guess what? Now it's time to enjoy the summer, right? Let's go out there, enjoy the summer, and follow us, because we're going to do some really exciting stuff around opportunities, pathways, what's going to be happening out there when we get closer to results day. We're going to do a lot of stuff around that. But until then, let's not think about it today, right? Let's go out there and enjoy yourselves. You work really hard, and just taking that deep breath. Okay, see you soon. Thank you. Bye.